NJTS, Riley. I mean, you've got great memories of that. Obviously, you're a winner there, and you've got multiple achievements. And rather than me talk about those in some sort of an intro, I don't really want to know every single win, but it's the ones that you remember the most, the ones that meant a lot to you, and even some background if there was. I know there's some wins that you had consecutive. There's others that you may have had to overcome some obstacles. It's your turn to just give us the Riley Hart version of himself.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I would just like to, before that starts, I think again a lot of credit to everyone for the Brunswick, like the transformation of the facilities is just so inspiring to see. And also, again, that the NJTS, like the segue was, it's just phenomenal series, and we have a lot to thank for everyone involved in all those things. But my story, I suppose, I was lucky in that I was always pretty competitive through the age groups. I think won a couple of national titles at each age group and that kind of thing. In terms of things that stand out, it's I suppose I can start with a later one that really is. I look back on it, and I think in tough times this was the thing that kind of helped me when I was deciding to get back on the bike, or when just even tough times. Like, it was just one to look back on is towards the end of an under-17 trip to Belgium. I had some pretty good success, had a couple of wins and that kind of thing, and I was finding that I was doing well in races and could kind of have some kind of say in how they'd go. And I'd become very good friends with an American guy who we were staying with, and he'd been there for years and years, and he'd never won a race or anything like that. So we hatched a plan to make sure that it was both of our last races. We were going home the next day, and he just said, you know what, you haven't had a win. You've done 100 races in Belgium and you've never won. Let's get you that win. So it was absolutely terrible day, about 80 starters or something like that. I remember it being a terribly windy, just wet, and just a typical Belgium day. And the course was brilliant, and he and I were just so excited for it. And about 50 Ks to go, which I would have only been about a 70 K race, so he was pretty ambitious. But about 50 Ks to go, he said to me, all right, let's do this. So we got away in a breakaway, the two of us, and we were in different kit. No one knew that we knew each other, and two Belgiums. And over the course of 50 Ks, we systematically, I'd send him up, I'd send him away, make the Belgiums chase and counter, and we systematically got rid of the two Belgiums. And I just kind of rode a TT for about 20 Ks. We lapped the bunch and got everyone pulled out besides the two of us. And we just won Belgium, and there was 3 finishers in the race, and he rolled across with his arms in the air, and I rolled across behind him. And that just epitomized like what sport can be for me. So it was just a kermesse, but that's a very meaningful one for me.
Love that story. That story because you can Google someone's achievements, that won't come up.
Yeah.
But you spoke about that first.
Yeah, and that's the one that easily stands out for me. I think also, going through, there was like a lot of great junior races, like winning my first Launceston wheel race. I think maybe at 10, or even winning the novice championships in 2007 at the Brunswick track. That was massive. I got a sash that was probably twice the size that I was. I think breaking the team pursuit age group records at 17s, and then the next year at 19s, and then a couple of years later going under 4 minutes to win the elites. They were all great things. But I think really just I look back, and a lot of my fondest memories are easily just NJTS races, where we were together as Brunswick, and I was fortunate enough to be in the position where oftentimes it was, I had a couple of great guys who were doing work for me, but it like it wouldn't have mattered. I mean, I say that, but I was just as happy to do work for them in the next race when I got my points or whatever, and just the ability. I mean, Nathan Boff, Ryan Shield, Isaac Gibbs, Paddy Butler. We were just to name a few. It was just a great to. It was Brunswick against everyone else, and I think we all pushed each other going through, and yeah, I think just that team aspect of cycling. Every fond memory all my fondest memories aren't, despite it being an individual sport, are the coming together of a team to do something special. And I think that's, yeah, when I reflect on what cycling means to me and what it represents, it is very much that team-based thing.
Yeah, let's face it, we all say the same thing, cyclists. So I think we can actually stop saying it's an individual sport. We all know it's a team sport. There's so much that has to happen, and 20k TT. That's a Damien Howson style work at the front to get Esteban Chavez a win. That's what you do. And when you get together at the end of the race, there's wonderful acknowledgement because everyone knows what you've done. The crowd may not work it out. If you're watching Roubaix for the first time, you may not realise the work that was done for O'Grady, for example. But I think it's a great lesson. Well, what I loved, I'll just say it again, is that off the bat, the first moment you spoke about was all about helping someone else. And then that was where you always went to for those achievements. We must note that those TPs were top age 17 and bottom age 19. Back to back, right? And that's an incredible
top age 19 too, I think.
And top
age 19. Yeah.
And
so and then in elites, and so some great riders that you rode with there too, and Lee Howard, one of them.
In the elites.
So that's you've been to the top, and there's been some setbacks, right? You've had your share of injuries, and if you feel free to discuss those I'd love to hear from you about that, because I know it's been a challenge, but one that you've overcome, I hope.
Yeah. I suppose, I don't know when it started, maybe 2016 or something like that. Would have been
I can tell you when it started as a dad who remembers the day. It was a day that you decided that you were going to ride up Mount, was it Ben Lomond? Or was it Barrow that you basically set out after doing multiple days back to back? You said, "Oh no, I'm just going to go right up Mount Ben Lomond or whatever." So I was in Tassie. I think I'd come home and you just kept riding, and then one knee got sore, the other knee got sore, and from then on, there's been we've had the undiagnosable knee. Sorry, please continue.
Yeah, I suppose. I just kind of started with knee issues then, and. A little bit, it began in my left knee, but it's kind of since then it's been a right knee problem. And, for the longest time it was, for all those results, nationals and all those kinds of things, it was always, I could train for 6-7 weeks or something in the lead up, maybe a month. And my knee just couldn't take a whole lot more than that. So I feel like I was never really, like, for all those races, I was never really doing myself any justice for what I felt like I could do, but you just kind of got on with it. And I was kind of managing it okay. A lot of physio work, a lot of just all different kinds of work. And in 2018, I think it was one of my last races in Belgium. I was in a final group of 4, and a Belgium guy looked back, saw me on the wheel and saw that I was in the gutter, and just thought that let's make sure I make the podium, and knocked me off into a ditch, and I hit my knee, and that was a impact injury on top of a overuse injury, or whatever you want to call it. And I had some bone bruising, all that kind of thing, and I got home, and basically it just got so sore that I probably didn't ride for 6 months or something like that. And another 6 months of trying to work out what was going on, and eventually a surgery to try and remove a plica and removal of scar tissue and all that kind of thing. And it was about a year off the bike, and I think it would have been, I think it was like the 1st of August or something last year was my surgery. It was 6 months rehab from surgery. And really in the last couple of months is when I've gotten back into cycling the last 3 months. And it hasn't been completely smooth sailing, but I've kind of been getting better week by week, more or less. As a result of the surgery and a lot of hard work in the gym and the physio and that kind of thing. So I don't know what the future will hold, but it has been a challenging 3-4 years or whatever with an injury. Yeah.
Did you ever feel like you may not bother?
Yeah, 100%. I probably, for that first year that I had off the bike, I was pretty sure that I wasn't coming back. I think it was, I just associated cycling with more pain than anything else. When you get so disappointed and you're in so much pain, like I'd go out for a ride for probably 2 years, 2 year stretch. Like I'd go out for a ride, and it wasn't, am I enjoying the ride? It was worrying about my knee. And it was, I'd get home, I'd wake up in the morning and I'd go step down the stairs, and if I felt my knee, it'd just be twinge of anxiety straight away. And it really took over my life. So coming back was not really, like, just from a mental health perspective, it wasn't something that interested me. And like that year, 18 months off the bike was probably like the best thing ever for any hope of a cycling career. I now see. I got very into rock climbing and bouldering, which was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Met lots of people, jobs, universities, all these different things that have really changed me as a person. And if I do come back to cycling, I know there'll be a far, far, far superior athlete, person, everything, compared to when, I suppose when all that was going on a couple of years ago, 3 years ago. Yeah.
Can I chime in here now, Ag, and just say, look, one of the cycling dad got wind of something that Australian coaches were calling junior world syndrome, and that was that a number of our junior coaches were putting that much pressure on their juniors to make junior worlds, and because Australia took it so seriously, would go over there and often win a lot of rainbow jerseys, and these kids had come back and then not have another goal, have not thought beyond that, and we were losing quite a lot of our talented juniors at the end of their junior careers. Riley, we somehow ended up with Rebecca DiCello as his coach. I remember how we ended up with a watt bike, and Beck was registered to sort of set the watt bike up. So she came and set Riley up, and Rebecca DiCello became his coach. And one of the first conversations we had with Beck was, listen, I really don't know a lot about cycling coaching, but I really just, I think it's important that we that we're not only coaching an athlete, a cyclist, we're coaching him, to being a good, well-rounded human being, I guess. And that was absolutely her focus and culture and the way that she handled things. And, Riley and Beck's relationship, I think, were, able to get him through the fact that he didn't make junior worlds. And I think a lot of that it mostly had to do with the knee, as well as being in a very competitive year. And so it was great that we'd already talked about that probably 4 or 5 years before, but it's also been incredibly relevant for how he's handled, how he's handled himself and found a real meaning in life through film and other exploits. So to any parent out there or any junior athlete out there, it's just so important that cycling isn't the be all and end all. But there is much more. It needs to be much more to your life than that.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, on Saturday we had a little forum on responsible parenting, and it was all about the expectations that parents might put on their children, and then consequently the expectations they put on themselves. And the common denominator with everyone who presented was the sport's got to be fun, and it's not the end of the world if you don't make something. Simon Plapp spoke, and Luke never made a junior state team. And also had his share of challenges, etc. And you just spoke about Boffy before. I mean, Nathan's had many injuries. He's still got one. He's got another one now. His wrist. So these things happen. But what I'm interested in is, firstly, it may appear like you're a proud parent jumping in, but I think you wanted to make a point, and it was very important. And you mentioned it too, Riley, about mental health. That we have to really be open about this, because we've got to create environments where people know that there's some elasticity, where it's not just one way. And you mentioned the rock climbing and bouldering. Some would argue and say, isn't that bad for your knee too? But it may or may not be. I don't think that's the point. The point is that you're able to find something new during that period where you were off the bike, and many would say, oh, that 18 months was, is that a waste or whatever, but you're referring it to as a growing time, a time when you actually became a better person. And that's a really big lesson. So, I've got one question. You said if you ever get back on the bike, so you're doing some training now, I assume, and you probably noticed today I followed you on Zwift. The reason why I did that is because I invite everybody who's on these interviews to do one of the Brunswick Zwift rides, because we do like riding with riders who we can keep up with through some magic function, so that we don't look like we're getting dropped. But is a lot of your training, as well as gym, etc., on a smart trainer at the moment? Is that what you're doing, or you're out on the road?
I'm actually not a smart trainer owner. I've
but
been.
You got a Zwift profile.
Do I?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think I actually have. I've used one at a friend's house a few years ago in its infancy. I've probably haven't been on a trainer for at least two years. It would have been my last time on a trainer. So I'll have to sort that out so that I can jump on a Zwift ride. I don't know the first thing about it, but I'm I'm very open to learning. But yeah.
So have you been out on the road then? Is that what you've been doing if you're riding?
Yeah, out on the road, just trying to keep things interesting. Got back from a bikepacking trip yesterday, which was a tough few days. And just I don't know. I suppose this whole coming back to cycling was just trying to do things on my terms. It was extremely important to me that I didn't have a power meter. That was my first thing. I was like, no chance I'm having a power meter for at least 6 months or whatever. Preferably if it was up to me, it'd be never. But so that was the first thing, and I think now I've strung together 12 weeks and all out on the road. Just absolutely loving it, trying to keep it interesting. New roads, new workouts, new everything, and just trying to find that love and that just bit of form. And yeah, I don't know, it's an interesting time.
Are you going to blog about the bike packing? Because we did a story on Shay Dungy, who's one of our members. He did some bike packing earlier in the year, and I noticed Connor Sens just did one at Ararat and put some videos up on YouTube. It's a massive niche. I know it sounds like a oxymoron, but it's actually I find it really interesting. I watch a lot of videos on bike packers now, and it must be an adventure and a half. So are you able to give us maybe a minute on where you went, how many Ks did you ride, and just some highlights from the bike.
Yeah. So this weekend I did the Goldfields track, which runs from Mount Buninyong to Bendigo. Take the train out to Ballarat, ride back to Buninyong, and then along there's marked signs for 202 kilometers, and there's probably 190k of it would be, probably more than that would be off road. And I was, I was definitely it was a bad decision. I was nervous going to sleep the day before I was going to jump on the train. I'd recommend it for anyone who's on a mountain bike and who is staying in accommodation along the route, but I wouldn't recommend it for anyone on a cyclocross or gravel bike who's got all their stuff strapped to their bike. It was just, maybe the time of year I did it, it was just unrideable. I think my second day 2, I did about 70k in 7 hours, and it was just treacherous. And it was 100k an hour headwind on the one road section, and I was just not making any progress. So it was a lot more of a mental challenge than a physical challenge, I think. But yeah, I think that it's taken off for good reason. Every day you wake up with a purpose. Every day you're waking up to explore new roads, and just that sense of adventure really is, I think, key to longevity in the sport of cycling. Why does anyone ride a bike? It's like obviously social aspect, but it's to get out there and explore. And I think if you are restricting yourself from doing that because you think you need to take your training more seriously or something, then I think I know I'm of the opinion that there's a trade-off that you need to make between working hard and taking things seriously, but then also keeping things fun and worrying about your longevity as a young cyclist.
You're absolutely right. I do recall you presenting some certificates to our junior riders a couple of years ago, and one of the messages you gave that group of, they ranged from 3 to 12 years old, was to make sure that you never take it too seriously. And I think you also told them, don't worry about how fast you're going or how many Ks you've ridden. In other words, you're saying don't even use a computer.
Oh, hello. I'm back, I think. Was that me?
Yeah, you did freeze for a while.
Sorry.
That's all right. I was just talking about the when you came to the junior clinic and gave some awards out, and your advice was don't really worry about how many Ks you're riding. Don't worry about how fast you're going. Just enjoy it.
Yep.
I think it's really important. So this mental state obviously helps you a lot, and I can see why. And the beauty of the bike is really what's coming through. Right? You see all the dirty Kansas stuff, etc., where there's riders who have just got off the tour and started to do these sorts of events, and finishing is success. It's the journey, not where you finish, etc. And people flock to this. You're studying. You're a budding producer. Have I got that right? What are you doing off the bike?
So director.
I'm studying film, which I'm absolutely loving. Very passionate about filmmaking, and I'm doing that at Swinburne, and it's a 4-year degree, and really goes in depth on basically every aspect of filmmaking. So I study there, and I work in the field, editing and shooting and assisting, and then also I have a knife sharpening business, which I kind of go around and sharpen people's knives for them. So yeah, keeping busy when I'm not on the bike.
I was just going to say, Riley, you've worked quite extensively with Alex Clements in Stanley Street Social. You've seen that blog and business grow. You've met some very interesting cyclists and other celebrities who like cycling. Has that had any impact on you, do you think?
Yeah. So obviously, I'm sure some of you, I don't know if any of you are subscribers or watch any of the Stanley Street social content, but I work very closely with Alex Clements on that, and yeah, it's just great fun to meet different people, get different perspectives. As Dad said, like there's been a lot of incredible stories that have been told on the podcasts and on the website, and I think it's something that you can take from everyone's story. There's a lot of great success stories and great just stories in general, and I think learning about them and hearing them from these different people and getting these different perspectives has been very formative over my time off the bike. That was a big aspect of it, definitely.
Yeah, and we rely on, well, not rely on, but we get a lot out of listening to what others have gone through, and it's how it's put together, which is really important. What sort of shows do we expect? Will you be a documentary filmmaker? Will you be a jack of all trades? Like, I mean, you come across as somebody who has, or you're certainly passionate and committed, but probably have a cause or two that you would you'd be behind. I mean, what are you going to be doing, and do you do any of this in as subjects as well? Like, is there a passion that you take up that is part of your actual study?
Yeah, I suppose at the moment, the way that I came into it was probably through photography, and so actual cinematography in terms of being the camera person has really been my first interest. But I mean, I think as you know, I do quite enjoy writing, so maybe something in that one day. I've just directed a short film, so which was an absolutely amazing process. So I really don't know which area I want to take it, but I think you know, as much as possible, I won't specialize. I just love getting my hands dirty in whatever area I can. And I think that's important for, again, like with cycling, like you need to think about longevity, and I think just keeping things interesting and learning about going into things that you're not necessarily comfortable with is the most important thing in any aspect.
What we're talking about here is life. It's
Exactly.
cycling's part of it. It's a pillar of it, and there are many pillars and there are many chapters that you close in life and start a new one, etc. Sometimes books are unfinished too. That's part of the fun as well. That so I'd imagine that you'd have influences that would be from different backgrounds and different areas. It's not just the stock standard. Yes, I've got a couple of heroes that are cyclists, and that's it. Who are your influences? I mean, Harry mentioned Rebecca before, highly regarded coach. Just about everyone who's been coached by Rebecca says the same thing. Very committed, etc. So there's Rebecca. Are there others that are influences? Hopefully, people we don't even know.
Yeah, definitely. Again, I do have to start with my parents and Rebecca. Beck, as you know, our relationship is a very special one, and I, regardless of coach, no coach, you know, she's a lifelong friend, and she has been, you know, on and off the bike. She's shaped me in a lot of ways. You know, probably two that come to mind in terms of influence, Anthony Bourdain and David Lynch, the film director, for their worldview, for their imaginations, the way that they open your eyes to different things. There's a lot of everyday influences for me, be it conversations with different people. I found a few conversations very influential that I've had with Brunswick member Pat Drapak. We spent some time in America together, and I found a lot of those conversations very influential. And then I think from my time rock climbing, and definitely met a lot of people there whose outlook, especially in regards to mental health and free will, and be it meditation practices or just these worldly views that they have, and those have all really shaped me. Like when I said that climbing was one of the best things that happened to me in that time off, I think there was a lot of that was just the people that I met and the perspective that they bring.
That's wonderful. If you'll be out there as a filmmaker if you're going to follow Lynch. This won't be a straightforward film. We'll be left guessing and maybe have to watch it 58 times to work it out.
You'll have to put a link up to his short film in the bio of however you said this. But as a parent, understanding that he's out there on his own for 2 nights in the Ballarat Bendigo bush with a fire and a bike, you perhaps do get a little concerned, but you also get a little bit proud that that he wants to spend time on his own, and he wants to, and I think that as a gift that I'm not sure if I had at his age, but just to be comfortable to spend time on your own and in your own mind and in in the environment and really take it in. So I think it's a great lesson that he's learned and he's sharing. Yeah, it's good.
I think my observation is that you're willing to learn. The people who grow are the ones who have an appetite for learning, and then they take a deep breath and take it all in, and I can see that. But clearly, as you mentioned, Harry, parents are an influence too. So congratulations, you've done a good job. So even when you think you haven't done a good job, you have done really well. Let's go to you on this. What are your not so much we've talked about highlights, but when you're a cycling parent, you're a mechanic, you're a counsellor, you're all sorts of things, and surely I mean I can write a book on stuff up, so you probably have got 2.
I've got a couple that come to mind. One was Leanne Gaffer used to probably still do run a terrific duty tour down there. On one of the days is the Victorian Hill Climb Championships, and Riley was a bit of a scrawny kid. I can't remember what age group it was. It might have been under 13s or under 15s, and he'd spent the day cleaning his bike, and to sort of get up there, we used to take the wheels off and all the rest of it. So we got there. And he sets out. He's pretty confident. He'd been training well and flying up there. And towards the end of it, he's like the lactic acid's coming through. He's really struggling. He got to the top and realised that when I put the wheel back in, I left the rear brake pad scraping on the rear rim for the entire trip up there. So I think he finished 2nd or 3rd. But I've got to say he was good humoured and didn't blame me so much for that. Do you recall that, right?
Definitely recall that. Hard to forget that one.
And I guess the other one was when we were up in fact, the Australian Hill Climb Championships up in Bright. And again, I think it must be top age 17. I think that on the Saturday, you won the ITT. I think it was a bit of a shock. I think you were going pretty good, and you won the ITT. Look, there were some bad influences up there because it was an Australian championship. There were some parents from Tassie and some parents from New South Wales and some parents from other places. And while the kids were tucked into bed, the parents perhaps enjoyed the Bright Brewery and a couple of other things up there. So it may have been a fairly late night, and it was an early morning start. And I hadn't particularly planned breakfast, thinking that we'd find there'd be something up there. There'd be a bakery open. So I think the best we could do was a muesli bar and an up and go bottle. And anyway, he was clearly flying at the time, and he was leading with a good gap, about 5K to go. And I think I was in the lead car on a bike taking photos or something. I can't remember, but I saw him going well, and I sort of rode up expecting him to come around the next corner in front. All of a sudden, he was nowhere to be seen. And would you like to take the story over from there, Riley?
I think we learned that one muesli bar wasn't an ideal breakfast for a national championship, but it's bonked pretty badly with about 5Ks to go. Another learning experience.
And I've got to say, he's always been very kind on me for trying my best. I was never the best mechanic or the best soigneur or the best coach, but no, look, we formed a formidable team of father and son in many junior events in many junior towns around Australia. And probably my biggest outtake of all of this is the hours and hours that we spent in the car together. And I remember forcing him to learn his times table and having many conversations about life. And he still won't talk to me very much about his girlfriends, but certainly about other areas of his life. But yeah, well, that's probably the highlight for me from the whole experience.
There's some places you don't go, right? Riley. He doesn't need to know everything.
Doesn't need to know.
But again, you've highlighted the beauty of the sport. I mean, the destination is you're going to a bike race, but the journey, the car drive, etc. That's where you form your best memories and really build strong relationships. But Riley, I guess you don't ring Dad for nutritional advice, right?
No, not anymore.
I think we should probably wrap it up. We could. There is a saying that you can talk for ages, and we could. There's probably many other stories, but I'll go back to the responsible parenting seminar we had in the forum. You and I have liaised about this. Just some of the tips that you'd like to leave for parents of junior cyclists, Harry, and in fact, just parents of cyclists. I mean, we always talk about juniors, but unfortunately, we also see a lot of pressure, post juniors. But yeah, just the best advice you could give parents of cyclists.
Look, I think it's about making it about them. I mean, I think that there were times, so as the parent of an athlete or the parent of a son, indeed, you really, they come into your life. There's no handbook, so you kind of work it out the best you can based on what your parents did and what society sort of suggests you should do. But because everyone's so individual, as are your kids, you kind of need to work it out as you go along. And I know there were times when I was perhaps a bit too pushy or a bit too critical on performance or decisions and whatnot. But I learned pretty quickly that that they weren't impactful on Riley, and they were not helpful. I think for me as a parent to enjoy the trip. So I think both of us have grown significantly by just allowing it to be, by certainly as a parent, by making it about them. And I think pretty much always encouraging. I mean, I think the times that I perhaps offered constructive criticism, it wasn't necessary, because I think if you give them the robustness to work it out for themselves, that's even better, because they're not going to listen to you. They might hear you once or twice, but it isn't until they work it out for themselves that it's really going to sink in. So I think just celebrate your kid. Let them be themselves. Whether they're a champion or whether they're just having the time of their lives, riding around the velodrome or the streets with their friends. I mean, both are equally important. In fact, probably the second is the most important. So, yeah, I think also just make friends and talk to people. It's a sport that has an incredible rich community of other parents and of other kids. And I think I learnt so much about the sport from Riley's peers' parents, and that they were so giving of information, advice, and for me, fun. So while we were on a junior tour and he was having fun, I was in the pub with a number of parents from lots of different states, equally having fun and telling stories and creating memories. So look, I'm not sure if it's meaningful advice, but it really
is. It's just you just got to take it all in and chill, right?
Yeah.
And we were talking about this on Saturday. Famous story. Years ago, way before my time, but a parent being really upset with a kid at the junior clinic, and bike ends up in the Merry Creek. So I think this is really about just, again, like I said before, take a deep breath and just remember. And I think a great example is Riley. Balanced, eclectic. I like that. There's a lot to you for a man of only 21 years of age. So Riley, this is the question. Rather than you giving advice, what's the best advice your dad ever gave you?
Best advice my dad ever gave me. It would have to be along those lines of just in terms of, I think he always encouraged, it probably wasn't an individual line. I can think of one individual line, but less so individual lines and more just encouraging to take the risks. The reality is, like, so few people are gonna make cycling their entire lives. It's gonna be a pillar of their lives and a formative one at that. But so why not take the risks, roll the dice, make it fun, make it mix it up. I think that is one thing that I took away, and one thing that I would encourage other juniors or parents of juniors to encourage. You know, it's not the there's a lot more, there's a lot bigger issues in the world than the result of a junior cycling race. So if you can have fun whilst you're out there, then really I think everything else is irrelevant, and just keeping in mind that it's just a pillar of your life that will inform a lot of other things, but it is just one pillar, and I think people need to remember that.
See, Riley, I thought you were actually going to say that the best advice I gave you was, I think, for the under 13 IP championships at Disc. In the lead up to that, I suggested that I thought it might have been. I suggested that perhaps you came from a bit too much of a privileged, soft background, and that cycling was very much a blue collar sport, and it was all about the butchers and the builders and the other guys that rode the track and made more money racing the track than they did at the general business, and that perhaps you were a little bit too content to really be able to suffer enough, because cycling's a competition of suffering. And I think the advice or the speech worked, because he'd been beaten by a fellow competitor in every other event in that, and he was in front for the last 5 meters, came in and vomited into the bin, and while he didn't say it, the look in his eyes was, "Dad, is that enough suffering for you?" So was a story I've told a few times.
Well, maybe that could be one of your first longer docos, that whole, just the whole lead up to that mammoth event. And we can end up with maybe a book of Harry's great motivational speeches. It's a bit like Terry Wallace in Year of the Dog. I can feel the inspiration. It was great.
Well, just as long as George Clooney plays me. So,
Wild was a shoo-in. I didn't have anyone else in mind, actually.
Very good.
Awesome, incredible to have the two of you. It's the first one we've done with interviewing two people. I've loved it. Didn't we say 45 minutes? Yeah, right. That was never going to happen, right? And Riley, you're the chief here. Post this, we'll stop recording and you can do some editing, because you may as well on your own.
Why not?
You can't. I don't think you'll be able to touch Harry and I up. There's nothing you can do there, but I'm sure you can make the rest of it come out well. So when people are watching this, it will be post the edit. But I can't thank you enough. The contribution you've made. And Riley, you don't understand the contribution you've made. I think Harry, Dad's contribution is pretty obvious, right? You can see it. But to be able to have members of a club, of a small community club, willing to give up their time whenever. But right now we have a very serious situation health-wise. We have people locked down. In this state, we might have a reversal of some of the easing that we've had. You're studying, and you found the time, and not once have you looked like I want to get out of here. You may have, but you haven't shown it. So I really appreciate it. It says a lot about the culture of the club, and it says a lot about the people that we attract. And sometimes you don't attract those sort of people, and we never see them. But I'm thrilled, and the members will too. So I just want to say thank you, and I think from there, let's all give everyone a wave and say goodbye. Thank you.
Well, before you do, Ag, I'd like to add. Look, I think this initiative that you've we've started. You know, I think you mentioned this was series 9 or
Number 9, I
episode
think,
9.
yeah.
Episode 9. I mean, again, it's fantastic for the club. It's fantastic for the community. You know, I've certainly seen, and again, while I've stepped back by the committee, I've seen from afar. And you're right, we have had chats offline. Just the passion that you brought to the club, and you really picked up the momentum that did come before you, and not just in the immediate past, but in the long distance past of the club. And that's where the real history is. So, you know, you're doing a fantastic job as a president, and you know, you're so passionate and so committed. And look, you know, I certainly as a member would also like to thank you for that. So and for this opportunity.
Thank you. Unscripted. Thank you. Thanks so much.
All
All right, we'll end it. Thanks a lot.
right, good on you.
Thank you.
See ya. Bye.